When parts of the WNBA quietly moved to ice out Caitlin Clark, Sydney Colson did the opposite. She pulled her in. In a league increasingly divided by old guard politics and ego-driven turf wars, Colson's decision to publicly support Clark wasn't just brave, it was strategic. Her move to Indiana wasn't just about basketball. It was a statement against bitterness disguised as tradition.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
And while others took aim at Clark's spotlight, Colson saw something worth protecting and worth investing in. Colson's leadership marks a shift in how influence works in women's basketball. Instead of guarding relevance or feeding off controversy, she's using her platform to build bridges. That's not just good PR, it's the kind of cultural leadership the league desperately needs. By aligning herself with the next generation and refusing to play into jealousy-fueled narratives, Colson's impact stretches well beyond any stat sheet. She's helping shape a league where progress beats politics and where unity becomes the real power move. Sydney Colson didn't just leave a championship team. She left behind an entire WNBA status quo. Walking away from the Las Vegas Aces wasn't a small career move. This was a team at the top of the league, with a tight-knit culture, a dominant record, and her close friend Aya Wilson front and center. Colson could have stayed. She could have added more rings, more accolades, more of what the league tells you success should look like. But instead, she went in a completely different direction. She joined the Indiana Fever at the bottom of the standings, a franchise trying to rebuild, a locker room with no guarantees. That decision wasn't about money. It wasn't about minutes. And it definitely wasn't about comfort. It was about leadership, growth, culture, and most importantly, it was about rejecting everything that was quietly rotting the foundation of the WNBA's power structure. Because Colson saw what was happening. The league wasn't just wrestling with talent gaps or team dynamics. It was struggling with narrative control. Caitlin Clark's arrival blew the doors off everything. The attention, the sponsorships, the nonstop media coverage. And for a league that had been fighting for relevance, you'd think that would be a win. But parts of the WNBA didn't take it that way. Clark didn't just walk into the league. She walked into a storm. From the moment she was drafted, there was a quiet but clear undercurrent of resistance. A tone, a tension, players who acted cold, media that flipped between praising and nitpicking, and a strange push to humble her rather than support her. It became the subtext of the season. The rookie who was too hyped, too mainstream, too liked. Sydney Colson didn't play into that. She exposed it, and she rejected it completely. By joining the Fever, she didn't just pick a new team, she picked a side. She aligned herself with a young core that included the league's most talked-about player and made it clear. Clark wasn't the problem. The narrative was. Colson walked into Indiana and brought something the team needed more than anything: stability, leadership, and a sense of humor that cut through the pressure. The media was circling. The expectations were sky high. Clark couldn't sneeze without headlines being written. But Colson didn't flinch. She embraced the chaos and helped build a culture that didn't just tolerate pressure, it thrived under it. Her leadership went beyond pep talks and veteran wisdom. She gave the Fever something they hadn't had in years: identity. Not just as a team trying to win games, but as a team trying to shift how success in women's basketball is defined. Colson brought resilience, joy, and most importantly, authenticity. She wasn't trying to fit into the old mold. She was cracking it wide open. Even when she suffered an injury, her role didn't fade. It expanded. She stayed present, vocal, consistent. She supported Clark through every wave of scrutiny. She helped steady the locker room through every losing streak, every viral headline, every hot take. And in doing so, she exposed a different model of leadership, one rooted in connection, not control. Because let's be real, the old guard in the WNBA has been clinging to hierarchy for a long time. The idea that rookies need to be put in their place. That popularity equals entitlement. That cultural influence is a threat instead of an asset. Sydney Colson said no to all of that. She built a bridge between generations instead of drawing a line. She saw the bigger picture, that Caitlin Clark's visibility isn't a detour, it's a catalyst, that elevating one player doesn't diminish others, that the league grows when its stars share the spotlight, not when they compete for scraps of it. And Colson's impact hasn't stopped with the team. Her voice is now part of the brand of the WNBA. Commercials, media interviews, her own show. She's not just a player anymore. She's an ambassador. And not because the league handed her the title, but because she earned it with every intentional move. She's built a public identity that balances humor and heart with real substance. She knows how to be relatable without being performative. She connects with fans who are new to the league. She gives them context, a reason to care. She helps make the WNBA feel less exclusive and more accessible. And that's what this new era needs. Not gatekeepers, not veterans who want to haze the next generation, but leaders who understand that influence matters. That culture is currency. That growth doesn't come from control. It comes from collaboration. Sydney Colson gets it. She's helping redefine success in real time. It's no longer just about stats or titles. It's about impact, visibility, the ability to shape how people feel about the game. And Colson's doing that with every step she takes in Indiana. Because the Fever aren't just rebuilding a roster, they're rebuilding a model. A sustainable one. One that mixes youth and experience, pressure and playfulness. One that can survive both injury reports and media scrutiny. And Colson's fingerprints are all over it. She chose this team, chose this moment, chose this player. And in doing so, she also chose to reject the quiet resentment that's been dragging the league down. The message was clear. Caitlin Clark didn't need to be tolerated. She needed to be welcomed, supported, coached, elevated. And the fact that it was controversial for a veteran like Colson to treat a rookie with respect, that's exactly what needed to change. Colson is that change. Her story is a blueprint for what leadership can look like, for what team culture should feel like, for how the league can stop chasing old validation and start defining its own standards. She's showing younger players how to grow with the league, not just inside it, how to take risks, how to build a brand without losing your voice, how to take control of your narrative before someone else writes it for you. Because Colson didn't follow the script. She rewrote it. She walked away from the comfort of the Aces and stepped into the spotlight with Clark, knowing full well what people would say. She did it anyway. Because leadership isn't about waiting for things to be easy. It's about showing up when it matters. And right now, it matters. The WNBA is standing at a crossroads. Between tradition and evolution. Between bitterness and belief. Between scarcity and opportunity. And the players leading the league into its next chapter aren't the ones clinging to the past. They're the ones like Sydney Colson, building the future right now. So if you're watching this shift happen and you're still wondering whether one veteran player can actually change the culture of a franchise, a locker room, and maybe even the league, look at what's happening in Indiana. Look at what Colson chose. And then ask yourself, is this really about basketball? Or is it about building something bigger? If you're here for stories that challenge the old systems and spotlight the real ones shaping the game, like the video, subscribe for more, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Has Sydney Colson become the cultural leader the WNBA didn't know it needed? We already know the answer. Sydney Colson didn't just make a move. She made a statement, and the league felt it. What she did when she left the Las Vegas Aces, a back-to-back championship team with the brightest spotlight in the league, wasn't just a career shift. It was a full-blown cultural reset. She walked away from stability, from legacy status, from an all-but-guaranteed place in another title run. And for what? To join a rebuilding franchise that hadn't sniffed playoff relevance in years? No, she didn't leave for Indiana. She left for growth, for purpose, for something that the WNBA has desperately needed but rarely known how to cultivate. Authentic leadership rooted in emotional intelligence, cultural relevance, and vision beyond the stat sheet. And in doing so, Colson sent a clear message. This league isn't going to evolve if everyone keeps playing it safe. She could have stayed in Vegas, shared jokes with Aya Wilson, posted rings on Instagram, and called it a career. Instead, she chose the harder path. A team with more pressure than wins, a rookie superstar under a microscope, and a culture that needed redefinition. And she did it all with clarity. Because it wasn't just about basketball. It was about the narrative. And let's not pretend that narrative hasn't been toxic lately. The moment Caitlin Clark got drafted, everything changed. The WNBA saw a rookie walk in with massive fanfare, game-changing marketability, and international attention. What should have been a league-wide win instantly turned into division. And not just competitive tension, the kind you'd expect in a professional league, but resentment. Suddenly, Clark wasn't just a player. She was a flashpoint. She was polarizing before she even stepped on the floor. And not because she asked to be, because the league didn't know how to handle someone with more power than the system itself. It's uncomfortable to admit, but that discomfort spilled into everything. The sideline body language, the dismissive quotes, the physicality that blurred the line between tough defense and targeted aggression. And the fans noticed. The media noticed. Everyone noticed. But inside the league, silence. Except for Sydney Colson. She didn't jump into interviews to defend Clark. She didn't tweet out vague messages. She showed up. She joined her team, supported her, created space for her, treated her like a teammate, not a threat. And that was louder than anything she could have said. Because when a veteran leaves the most dominant team in the league to stand next to a rookie in the most scrutinized situation, that's not subtle. That's intentional. That's Colson saying, this is where the real work is. She didn't see Clark as a problem. She saw her as a pivot point. And while others were rolling their eyes at the hype, Colson was asking the real question, what if we leaned into it instead of pushing it away? What if, instead of tearing her down, we elevated her, and in doing so, elevated the entire league? That's what she's doing in Indiana. And let's be clear, this is bigger than team chemistry. Colson is actively challenging the league's old guard. Not with insults, not with callouts, but with leadership choices. By showing that being a veteran doesn't mean defending territory. It means using your voice to guide the next generation, not silence it. And she's doing it in every way possible. On the court, even injured, she's present. On the bench, she's a voice of calm in the chaos. In a locker room, she's creating a space where young players can grow without fear. And off the court, she's in commercials, doing media appearances, making her own show, not to boost her brand, but to boost the league. She understands something most people in sports don't want to admit. Visibility is survival. The WNBA can't grow if its stars are stuck behind outdated ideas of humility and hierarchy. The game needs faces, voices, and stories that translate. And Colson? She translates. She knows how to take the pressure off the headlines and remind people why they love the game. She knows how to bring humor into high-stakes environments. And she knows how to use her platform without ever making it about her. That's why she's thriving in Indiana. Because while the team rebuilds on the floor, Colson is rebuilding the culture. She's helping players find their footing. She's giving them permission to have fun, to take risks, to breathe. And she's making it clear that leadership doesn't come from a stat line. It comes from consistency, from energy, from presence. Caitlin Clark needed that. Because while she came into the league with more buzz than most MVPs, she came in alone. The pressure was suffocating. The expectations were absurd. And when the league seemed unsure how to handle her, Colson stepped in and said, I do. She didn't try to manage Clark. She supported her. She didn't try to compete with the attention. She amplified it. She didn't see a threat. She saw potential. And in doing so, she showed exactly what the league needs more of. Veterans who understand that leadership is not about protecting the past. It's about investing in the future. Colson's move isn't just about this season. It's about what comes next. Coaching, mentorship, culture building. She's laying the foundation for the type of league she wants to see. A league where players don't have to fight for respect just because they're popular. Where a young star isn't isolated for drawing attention. Where leadership looks like empowerment, not gatekeeping. She's rewriting the formula, and she's proving that personal growth, faith, and emotional intelligence are just as critical to winning as rebounds and field goal percentage. Her decision to leave Vegas wasn't a loss. It was a lesson. That success isn't always found at the top. It's built on the way up. And in Indiana, Colson is building. With Clark, with the team, with a new kind of culture that values resilience, joy, and belonging. She didn't come to Indiana to be saved. She came to help lead the saving. And in doing so, she's giving the WNBA a new face of leadership. Not flashy, not arrogant, just real. So while others keep debating Clark's role in the league, Colson's already answered that question. With every practice, every huddle, every supportive moment on and off the court. She rejected the league's anti-Clark undercurrent without saying a word. She just chose the right side. And the Fever? They're better for it. The WNBA? It's starting to notice. And if you've been watching closely, you already know this move wasn't just a good decision for Sydney Colson. It was the right one for the league. Sydney Colson didn't need a press conference to call out the league. She didn't need a viral interview. She didn't need a quote in some post-game scrum. She just made one move, one strategic, meaningful, unapologetic move, and the entire WNBA dynamic shifted. She left the Las Vegas Aces. She walked away from a championship team, from a dynasty in motion, from a front-row seat to legacy and rings and media hype. A team led by Aya Wilson, her best friend. A system where she was respected, protected, and part of something that, on paper, looked like the dream. But Colson wasn't chasing trophies. She was chasing truth. And the truth is this. The WNBA needed a reset. The energy had become stale. Too many veterans gatekeeping. Too many whispered resentments. Too many players protecting their place in the hierarchy instead of protecting the league's future. Sydney Colson wasn't having it. So, she packed up, left the champions, and joined the rebuilding Indiana Fever. And, suddenly, everything started making sense. It wasn't just about basketball. It wasn't about court time. It wasn't about minutes or stat sheets. It was about culture, about leadership, about stepping into a system that wasn't finished, and helping it find its identity. The Fever weren't glamorous. They weren't trending yet. They had the #1 draft pick and all the pressure that comes with it. They had Caitlin Clark, a rookie more scrutinized than celebrated. And they had a locker room under a microscope. And that's where Colson saw opportunity. Because while the rest of the league was busy reacting to Clark, complaining about her press, side-eyeing her endorsements, leaking passive-aggressive quotes, Colson made a decision. She wasn't going to compete with the future. She was going to build it. Her decision to join Indiana wasn't just a personal risk. It was a rejection of the WNBA's most toxic storyline. The silent campaign to isolate Caitlin Clark. The narrative that had been brewing under the surface since day one. Whispers that she hadn't earned her spot, that she was being handed too much too soon, that the attention she got wasn't deserved. Colson saw through it. She knew what that energy really was. Fear. Because Clark didn't just bring fans. She brought change. She disrupted everything, from TV ratings to ticket sales to endorsement deals. She showed the league that someone could enter the room and instantly hold more cultural power than most of the veterans combined. And instead of embracing it, many players rejected it. But not Colson. She didn't flinch. She embraced Clark without hesitation. Built her up, stood beside her, brought humor and heart to a team that needed both. And in doing so, she exposed what so many others were too afraid to admit. That the problem was never Caitlin Clark. It was the league's refusal to evolve. Colson knew that elevating Clark didn't mean erasing anyone else. It meant making room. It meant leading with maturity, with confidence, with vision, not insecurity. And that's exactly what she brought to the Fever. This wasn't performative mentorship. This was real, day in, day out. At practice, on the bench, in the locker room, in interviews. Colson created a culture of support, resilience, and belonging. Not just for Clark, but for the entire team. She cracked jokes when tensions ran high. She gave perspective when the lights got too bright. She reminded everyone that basketball is supposed to be fun, even when the stakes are high. And when Colson got injured, she didn't disappear. She stayed locked in, present, vocal, focused. She showed the team that leadership doesn't leave when the jersey comes off. It stays. It adapts. It evolves. And that right there, that's the difference. That's what separates Sydney Colson from the veterans who've been trying to gatekeep the next generation. While they were busy complaining about Clark's spotlight, Colson was busy making sure it meant something. Because she understands something critical. You can't grow a league if your best players are treated like outsiders. Caitlin Clark walked into a league that didn't know how to welcome her. And Sydney Colson said, "I'll show you how." She didn't need a headline. She needed a locker next to hers. And that action, that presence, did more for unity than any press release ever could. Colson didn't just reject the WNBA's anti-Clark energy. She redefined what leadership in women's sports is supposed to look like. And she did it by putting her own career on the line. That's the part no one's talking about enough. She could have stayed in Vegas and won another championship. She could have stayed a role player in a system that loved her. But she walked away. Not for glory. Not for clout. For impact. Because she saw something more valuable than a ring. She saw a moment. A rookie under fire. A team under pressure. A league at a crossroads. And she said, "Put me in there." That's not just a leadership move. That's a legacy move. And we're watching it unfold in real time. The Fever, once written off, are now one of the most watched, talked about, and culturally relevant teams in the league. Not just because of Clark, but because of the ecosystem around her. Because of the intentionality of the team. Because of veterans like Colson who are building something sustainable. This is what growth looks like. It's messy. It's public. It's full of challenges. But it's real. And Sydney Colson is leading it with humor, heart, and humility. She's setting the standard. Not just for how to treat your teammates, but how to protect your league. How to grow the game without stepping on the next generation. How to shift the culture from cold silence to warm support. She's not performing unity. She's practicing it. Every single day. And the impact will outlast her playing days. Because what she's building in Indiana is a blueprint. A model that other teams will study. A culture that young players will want to be part of. A structure that prioritizes belonging over bitterness. The old guard had its era, but it's over. This is the new wave, led by players who understand that power isn't something you hoard, it's something you share. And no one's sharing it better than Sydney Colson. If you're following this season closely, if you're watching the dynamics, the headlines, the tone, you know what's really happening. The game is changing, and it's not just happening on the scoreboard. It's happening in the locker room, in the mentorship, in the energy. And Sydney Colson? She's right at the center of it all. So if you're here for real leadership, the kind that doesn't just talk about change, but becomes it, go ahead and like this video, subscribe for more breakdowns, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Has Sydney Colson just become the quiet force shaping the loudest movement in the WNBA? Because from where we're sitting, she's not just playing the game. She's transforming it.